Epilogue. From April 2008 until June 2015, 3 generations of the Angelis family have suffered at the hands of those who turned their backs on us because they either chose to ignore my pleas for help or, for one reason or another, chose to side with my wife and oppressor, Lien Thi Hong Lee Angelis. What happened to the Angelis family should never have happened to anyone, but the sad reality is that it did happen, all because of what I call the Ottawa virus, an infectious airborne virus whose signs and symptoms include heartlessness and socio-political apathy caused by a number of factors, including personal bigotry arising from anger or hatred towards specific people, outright laziness, systemic discrimination, which causes certain people to fall through the cracks, and or simple compliance, that is, the need to fit in socially, politically, and professionally. Although these signs and symptoms have also appeared in other cities and towns around the globe, both in the present and in the past, one would think that Ottawa, the capital of an advanced industrialized country, would have taken preventive measures to immunize its residents and workers from being infected or affected by such a virus. As an active participant in the international community, Canada, through its capital, Ottawa, should know better given what Canadians have seen and been involved in currently, notably the conflicts in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria, and previously, particularly the First and Second World Wars. Karl Jaspers, a German scholar, philosopher, and author, wrote about the atrocities of Hitler's Third Reich during the Second World War titled The Question of German Guilt. In it, Jaspers specifically wrote, "That which has happened during World War II is a warning. To forget it is guilt. It must be continually remembered. If it was possible for this to happen in the past, it remains possible for it to happen again at any minute. Only in knowledge can it be prevented." This deeply profound quote, which was also used as the end of the BBC documentary series The Nazis, A Warning from History, was one of Jasper's dire warnings which specifically heeds readers to stop the increasing tendency to regard humans as mere instruments of ideological goals. In his book, Jaspers also openly scrutinized and criticized the guilt of Germany for its actions and inactions during World War II. He specifically stated that whoever had participated actively in the preparation or execution of war crimes and crimes against humanity during World War II was criminally and morally guilty, and that those who passively tolerated and allowed these horrible things to happen for whatever reason were still responsible politically and metaphysically, guilty for not objecting. In this respect, all survivors of the Second World War era bear the same responsibility and share a collective guilt. Jaspers felt that no one should be exempt from this collective guilt and responsibility, and that this past wrongdoing should be used to empower and influence people to transform their society from a state of failure into a highly developed and morally responsible democracy. Although Jaspers was specifically referring to the atrocities of Germany and by extension its allies and collaborators during World War II, his message and its foundation can and should be applied today both across Canada and especially its capital, which is supposed to serve as a role model and set the example for the rest of the country instead of be an example of the country and internationally. If, as a civilized society, we do not heed Jasper's warning, what happened to me, my young children, and my elderly parents will happen again to someone else, especially if that person is already socially and culturally devalued. For example, a woman in a man's world, a man in a woman's world, and a member of a certain social, ethnic, or religious group that is considered inferior by the majority population. There was no justification why the 911 emergency response telephone operator that I spoke to on April 8, 2008, could not transfer me directly to the Ottawa City Police in my time of urgent need. Similarly, there was no reason why my children and I had to wait 36 minutes for the Ottawa City Police to arrive at my home after I had phoned them directly requesting their help for me, but more importantly, my 3-year-old son, when the standard time for the police to respond for help is 9 minutes. When Ottawa Police Constables T. DiNardo and Samir Sharma finally arrived, neither took my concerns seriously, despite witnessing what at the very least was a disturbing and problematic act committed by my wife Leanne and her lover Ali Khan Ali Nathu towards my 3-year-old son. The constable simply walked away after proposing less than perfect solutions. The justice of the peace at the courthouse fared no better. After he rejected my restraining order application 2 days later because of a technicality, that is, I did not know where my wife's lover lived, and because, in the opinion of the justice of the peace, not enough was done to me or the children to warrant a restraining order. Even my own divorce lawyer, Miss Cornelia Mikulski, repeatedly denied my request to assist me in getting a restraining order against Leanne and Ali Khan Nathu because she was more concerned about Leanne's rights as a woman and as a mother than my, and more importantly, my children's rights to live at home safely and peacefully while waiting to go to family court to begin the official divorce process. I had repeatedly informed my divorce lawyer about the hostile behavior of the children's mother towards me and the children, which was increasing each day as we got closer to the scheduled court date on July 8, 2008. There is no shelter in Ottawa where men and their children can seek refuge from their hostile wives, not a single damn one. After the preventable tragedy of June 8, 2008, rather than comfort me or offer me sympathy and compassion, I was branded and treated as a criminal instead of a victim by the Ottawa City Police, the prosecuting attorney's office, several criminal and family court judges, the news and social media, and social workers Anik Viau and Tanya Kingsbury from the Children's Aid Society of Ottawa, who had prevented the children from living with their family or members from their Greek community in order to help prosecuting attorney Julie Scott and the investigative police officer Sergeant Keith Patrick prepare my daughter to help them convict me in court for a crime that I am not guilty of. These people were not motivated by true justice, but rather by pure individual and organizational self-interest and or their personal dogmatic ideological beliefs. How is this any different than those who justified their actions during the eras of the Ottoman Empire, the Roman Empire, the Russian Revolution, the Third Reich, the Taliban's jihad, or even those of ISIS in Iraq and Syria? Ideological causes should never trump social equality, civil and legal rights, or basic, genuine human compassion. My young children and I were left alone to fend for ourselves, resorting to seek support from my priest, Father Alex Mikalopoulos, and the children's 2 school principals, people who did their best to assist me and the children, but ultimately did not have the legal authority to offer us the protection that we needed at a dangerously urgent time. Who else could I have turned to for help when those who had the legal authority to help me and my children in Ottawa ignored my cries for help? One thing that I have concluded, after having been persecuted and prosecuted in Ottawa between 2008 and 2015, is that changes are urgently needed in the way that legal matters are dealt with by the Ottawa Police, the judges and the justices of the peace, the attorneys, both defense and prosecutors, and the child social workers. I have arrived at the conclusion that these changes will not occur anytime soon for the very simple reason that procedural and behavioral changes will only be achieved when there are changes in the way people think. As long as the majority populations of Anglo-Saxon and French descent born during the baby boom generation between 1946 and 1966, but also the generation born before 1946, continue to occupy positions of authority in Ottawa, desired changes will not be made, since these generations in power predominantly favor the status quo, either because they do not understand or cannot accept the new realities of the 21st century, or because they are afraid that changing the way we think and do things will cause chaos and disruption to the political correctness bubble that safeguards the ideological causes of the 20th century. The fact that the age of retirement for judges and others within the fields of law is 75 means that the youngest baby boomer will retire in the year 2039. That is a considerably long time to wait for those necessary changes in Ottawa, Canada to begin. I will be a 70-year-old grandfather by that time, if my children decide to have children of their own. This means that at least another generation, if not more, will have to endure a lifetime of needless inequality and consequently potential suffering because they were born a gender or ethnicity that is considered unworthy of fairness, credibility, significance, and respect by the majority populations. Regardless of where we live in the world, whether it is Canada, which claims to be a just society, or elsewhere, it should no longer matter, especially in the 21st century, whether we are born male, female, Caucasian, Black, Asian, Aboriginal, handicapped, Christian, Jewish, etc. But again, the sad reality is that it still matters which subcategory we belong to. Ottawa still appears to be living in the 1980s and is out of touch with the rest of Canada and the international community. The capital of Canada needs to get with the program and abandon its obsolete motto of peace, order, and good government. My understanding is that order signifies hierarchical order, a concept that contradicts the notions of social equality and justice. Of course, Canada is not the only nation guilty of maintaining a social hierarchy, although the irony with Canada and other socialistic or quasi-socialistic nations is that their leftist ideologies, which is founded on the grounds of equality, have done absolutely nothing to ensure true legal equality and social justice for all. To put it bluntly, Canada does not work, and neither will a separate and sovereign Quebec. The problem is not in the governing structure of Canada and its 10 provinces and the 3 territories, but in the thoughts and behaviors of the majority of the people who hold positions of authority in the country. Yes, charismatic politicians like former Liberal Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau have promised change, but what little change that was achieved is, for the most part, window dressing. It looks pretty from the outside of the house, but it does little to protect the people inside the house from the harmful rays of the sun. With Pierre Trudeau's son, Liberal Party leader Justin Trudeau eyeing to be Canada's next Prime Minister, can the residents of Canada who are seeking change truly expect to see it? If former Prime Minister Trudeau, the father, failed to deliver his promise for a just society to my father, who lived in Pierre Trudeau's constituency back in 1968, for his children, it is highly unlikely that future Prime Minister Trudeau, the son, will ensure a just society for me and my children, even when I live only 5.6 kilometers or 3.5 miles north from his residence in Ottawa. They say that home is where the heart is, and although I have lived in Ottawa since June 24, 1995, Ottawa no longer feels like home, even though it is the capital of the country where I was born in and also where my own 2 children were born. Even with my beloved Greek community of about 5,000 people and our Greek Orthodox Church, I no longer feel at peace, accepted, welcomed, wanted, or respected outside the Greek community in Ottawa. Other than within the Greek community, which sadly is not enough, there is no true warmth or happiness in Ottawa. It could very well be that there never was any warmth and happiness to begin with, and that it took a personal tragedy to finally see and accept that harsh reality. Before 2008, as a patriotic superhero who served his country, I loved the symbolism of what Ottawa signified and represented because Ottawa is the capital of Canada. After 2010, after having taken off my rose-colored glasses, I finally see how ugly Ottawa is. Do not get me wrong, from a purely architectural and natural scenic perspective, Ottawa is a beautiful city. Ottawa simply lacks soul. Things are different now. My tragic and disappointing experiences in Ottawa have tarnished my beautiful memories of this city, and consequently my thoughts and feelings of this capital city have changed. It is not Leanne who assassinated the Captain Canada in me. Not once during my 18 years with Leanne had my patriotic pride and attachment to Canada waned, but rather it is the people in Ottawa that destroyed the patriotic hero in me, the people that I relied on to be there for me and my children in our time of need. Not once have I ever been a burden to the people or institutions in Ottawa, nor have I ever asked for something more than I was entitled to. To have my one-time request for assistance, not for me, but for my 2 young children, true natives of Ottawa, rejected and ignored, was a slap in my face. When that apathetic slap was followed by a vindictive retaliation to avenge my violent, controlling, and abusive wife simply because she occupied a higher social position than me in Canada, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I know that I am not alone in feeling this way, and that a time will come when others will stage another revolution to demand changes to the status quo, similar to the way revolts have occurred in Eastern Europe during 1989 with the fall of communism, or the democracy movement during the Tiananmen Square protests also in 1998, or the democracy movement during the Tiananmen Square protests also in 1989 in China, and the Arab Spring protests against repression and censorship that had spread throughout the Arab nations in 2010, 2012, the Greek anti-austerity protests known as the Indignant Citizens Movement from 2010 to 2012, and more recently the Hong Kong Occupy movement protests in 2014 against the undemocratic electoral reforms put forward by Communist China. Yes, a revolution in Canada is imminent, but unfortunately I no longer have the patience to wait for this to arrive. I have done my part by writing this book to inspire younger generations to continue the cause for real equality. Even if I have lost faith in Canada's current institutions and the people that work in them, I still have faith and hope in the younger generations to demand and accomplish changes to make the country a better place to live. It is only when we will be able to say, in the true sense of words, Vive le Canada! Long live Canada! Sadly for me, it is time to leave. There is no real reason to stay. I do not have any family in Ottawa, nor do I have a meaningful job here. Even if I was offered a job, I likely would not accept it. My heart tells me to follow my true calling in mass communication, a calling that I first heard when I produced the internal teaching video for my division in 2002, but had ignored it to continue to serve my country as a Canadian federal civil servant. In order to better answer my calling, it is best that I find another more conducive home. In all honesty, I wanted to leave Ottawa after I had finally received justice on December 18, 2014, but there were several obstacles and obligations that kept me from leaving, the most important obligation being to get the children back with their biological family, and this was something that the social workers, with the help of their powerful lawyers, were keen on not letting happen, partly because they still wanted to isolate my daughter to ensure that the entire truth of what happened from April 5, 2008 to June 8, 2008 never gets fully revealed to the general public to protect their friends in the Ottawa police, partly because it is economically beneficial to the social workers and their organization. The Children's Aid Society of Ottawa, to keep the children as wards of the state, who pays them to care for the children. And partly because of the personal beliefs of the social workers, That is, they either believe that the state should care for all children whenever the social workers do not approve of any member of the children's family or their ethnic community to be their legal guardians, or the social workers still believe that I had something to do with their mother's death and consequently feel that they have to avenge her by giving her children away to people outside of the family or community. Thankfully, God is always on my side. My children will ultimately rejoin me in their early adulthood, free to leave Ottawa, Canada. As I got into the car, I thought to myself, if moving across the border was the right thing to do, but the more that I thought about it, the more I was convinced that it was, by staying in Canada, I would always have this black cloud originating from Ottawa follow me wherever I went within Canada. Once someone has been inside the police and judicial systems, that person will always remain in the systems. Not only that, but they can also easily be pushed back into the system at any time and by anybody. Leaving Canada is the most reassuring and smartest thing to do. I know that even though the children and I were not born there, we still stand a better chance of being treated as equal citizens in the United States, especially since I grew up there. It's unfortunate that Ottawa had to ruin it for the rest of Canada because, in all honesty, the country needs more people like me, although some might disagree and argue that our kind, however that is defined, is not welcomed in Canada. For those in Canada who do not agree with their intolerant neighbors, well, all I can say is that there has been more than one instance in history when Ottawa has ruined things for the rest of the country. I am certain that there are still people in Canada and even North America that still want to brand me as an undesirable and make me their poster boy, that is, make an example out of me to suit their political needs and beliefs, similar to the way it was done with Mary Magdalene by Pope Gregory the Great in 591. I am certain that many people in Ottawa and possibly even in the rest of Canada are happy to see me go, even though it was proven in court that the children's mother was the one who manipulated and fooled everyone by relying on people's stereotypical, racist, and/or man-hating beliefs into thinking that she was the victim instead of the violent perpetrator, despite my bloody injuries to my penis. If these stereotypical racist and man-hating views and beliefs did not exist in Canada, my late wife and other like-minded women would not get away with their malicious plans for revenge against their boyfriends, husbands, lovers, male friends and relatives, or any other male acquaintance. Again, there are just some people in Canada who either still want to believe that I am, and that all men are, the bad guys, or, and this is the scary part, approve of and condone such maliciousness for the sake of their personal self-interest or the greater social cause, whichever cause that may be. For these people, it is all about the end results, with little concern about how to attain them. Bravo! As I drove southbound on Highway 416, my watch beeped again at the stroke of midnight. It was officially July the 1st, 2016. Ahead of me, I saw the bilingual English and French sign on the shoulder of the highway informing me that I have just left Canada's National Capital Region. As I drove past the sign, I could not stop myself from thinking one last bilingual thought. Au revoir, Ottawa, et bon débarras. Goodbye, Ottawa, and good riddance.